All right, we are back for another edition of the Field of 68 Mid-Major Show. Sean Paul here with Rocco Miller, who is now back home after a long week in North Carolina. You got to see some mid-major teams this week. Which teams did you see? You saw North Carolina A&T for sure. Who else do you see?
Saw North Carolina A&T lose to Hampton by one in the final minute on MLK Day. That was
What an
amazing.
environment that seemed like, by the way.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad it was on CBS because it sounded
Uh-huh.
like they got really good numbers in terms of how many people tuned in.
Hmm.
Earlier this year, North Carolina A&T had NC Central on big CBS on December 28th, and that also had a lot of viewers. It's a special place, Corbett Sports Complex, Corbett Court. It's all named after Corbett, but just the way it's designed, and they bring the entire band as if it's a football game. You don't see that really anywhere,
That's probably
and
part of why it's so loud, too.
it is, and they're not allowed to play too often, but they have a DJ there on site too,
That's
which
awesome.
you see that at like Power Five games, but I mean it's like on point. They basically are rooting for commercial breaks so they can dance more. Just the everyday student at North Carolina A&T, and the culture is just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. It was, and obviously it came down to that last free throw. So pretty cool game. That was Monday night. Started with a game a little bit above water with Charlotte Memphis on Sunday, and then yesterday I was at Gardner Webb in the Big South
There
hosting
we go.
hosting first place UNC Asheville. Very cool experience. You know, driving out to Gardner Webb. When you get there, there's really nothing there but the tiny college. It's a private school, but once you're on campus, everything's like super brand new. I got there a little early and went into the football facility. Everything's state of the art in terms of like up to new facility code. The football stadium's super nice. Basketball facility is pretty cool. It's really intimate. It's not, they don't need anything that big. And their student section was full. The rest of the gym not too full, but it got loud. And UNC Asheville, you know, they were able to overcome a horrible first half. Gardner
Yep.
Webb could have put that game away in the first half. Really missed an opportunity to do that because Asheville started the game 0 for 12 from deep. But they only built up that 9-point lead, and then you knew Asheville was going to strike at some point. Once they got rolling, Gardner Webb just couldn't figure out any answers to stop them, and then they went cold. So good win for Asheville. Fun battle of the Bulldogs out there.
I mean, how about UNC Asheville though? Like, this is kind of just an impromptu thing that we didn't really have lined up. But I mean, this
Yeah.
team is impressive. I mean, they lost obviously Drew Pember, who was the identity to what that team was. But Mike Morrell, the way he's been able to continue just winning, and I had him on when you were flying somewhere earlier in the year, and just him talking about everything that program has been through, and obviously a lot of areas in North Carolina hit by the hurricane, but just looking at this team, I mean, Toyaz Solomon, he's impressive, isn't he? I mean, in person, I'm sure it was even better. He's been fantastic for him this year. Greg
Yeah.
Gant, who's been in college for seemingly forever at NC State and Providence, and now here, and the way they can run some offense through him, he's a really good passer. And Jordan Marsh, I don't know. I think this is a favorite in the Big South. I mean, that's not a hot take at this point, but they've looked really good.
I mean, in my mind, maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, and maybe I know Asheville didn't play their best game yesterday, but in my mind, I still think they're maybe second or third with High Point being so talented, and
Hmm.
we saw Longwood get a big win against Radford yesterday too, and they've got some talent over there. But you're right, like with with Gant, you know, being so experienced, I think he has a 3 in terms of his assist to turnover ratio for the whole season,
Yeah.
third best in the Big South. I remember talking to the staff about that yesterday. And then Fletcher Aby is very, you know, he was so clutch. He really was the big shot maker yesterday when they really needed it. Solomon was the leading scorer. And Jordan Marsh is, right now, if you look at KenPom, number 1 for Big South Player of the Year. So,
I think
so
that's
many,
about right. Yeah.
yeah, and Josh Banks can really play too. So very bouncy and can microwave it up when they need him. So you're right. Like Asheville has a lot of weapons. That you know they're trying to figure it out defensively. I feel like their defense has actually improved, of course, since that shaky start to the year. And you know they're finding new ways to win. They're sixth in the country before yesterday at 86.7 points per night, and they win yesterday with like 61 points. So that I think that's important because they're going to need to figure out a way to win in a variety of ways to win the league.
I will say though about High Point. I mean, I'm a High Point guy. Probably always will be a High Point guy. These are two teams that I just love watching. I think they're two very well coached teams. I think those are two coaches in Alan Huss and Mike Morrell that probably deserve a job in a bigger conference at some point in the very near future. But like looking at High Point, they're 34th in offensive efficiency on Ken Palm, and just the way they can go so deep into the bench, that's something UNC Asheville just doesn't really have. Like just looking at their box score from the other day, they pretty much have 10 guys they can play and rely on. Like they don't have a ton of drop off. You have Abdoulaye Thiam who started last year. You have Trey Benham who started a lot of games last year. Those guys are your ninth, 10th men. And then you have
Yeah.
Terry Anderson, who's their first or second best defender behind Kamani Hamilton. He's their eighth man. And then you have Simon Hildebrandt, who's slowly coming on. He had 9-9 against USC Upstate. Justin Bodo and him effectively split minutes. But like, if Keza Jiffa and Demorian Williams go off, it's going to be hard to beat that High Point team. We did see Asheville do it, but I think it would be awesome for the conference if that's the title matchup, because I think from top to bottom, that's going to be the thing that gets the most views, that gets the most attention, and probably the two teams that have the best chance at winning a tournament game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. And now that I'm thinking about the depth of Asheville's roster and getting to see them yesterday, maybe they are just slightly more talented than Longwood. I've had Longwood more in my head because I know Longwood really put a lot of resources into their program and
Griff's
how they.
such a good coach too, though.
And
Like,
Griff's a really good coach, and he knocked off High Point last year and stole that thing as the 5 seed. So
uh,
yeah, and I mean I would like Radford up there too, but they just haven't gotten over the
and
hump
Winthrop.
in their big games. And of course, yeah, and Talford's still at Winthrop. They've got a lot of good pieces. They play fast. It's a fun team to watch, and they've got a chance too. So it's good for the league. I think it's scary for the coaches because, like you said, Morrell and Huss, and I mean even to a degree, some of the other guys like Griff um, and Prosser, et cetera, they're ready to move up as well with a big run. So yeah, only one of those guys can win the Big South tournament, and that might be the guy who gets it.
Man, I'm excited for that one though. I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
one of the conference tournaments like I'm absolutely just locked in for. But now let's move on to stuff from kind of this week and last week. The way we've been kind of doing these episodes, we've been doing it more so on a Friday or so, so we can get the weekend games in time and everything. So let's get into it here and talk about the teams of the week from last week. You want to kick us off here, Rocco?
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. Just a team that we haven't really talked much about is Robert Morris. Of course, we interviewed Jermichael Stillwell for very good reason from Milwaukee. Cleveland State's taking all the headlines. I know we've mentioned them a few times, and deservedly so. But what Robert Morris has been able to do, I think, has really surprised people almost as much as Cleveland State, if not more, just based on the fact that they are only 6-4, so they're 3 games behind Cleveland State. But the teams they're winning against and how they're getting it done behind guys like Cam Woods has really impressed me. So many close, tight victories. It all started when they were off to an 0-2 start, got the 3 overtime win over Northern Kentucky. Then they beat Wright State at home by 3 in a game later in the season, and that kicked off their current 4-game win streak. And that includes a win at Milwaukee on Sunday, and that like really blew me away. Got that one done late, of course, and then another tight one just yesterday, Wednesday night, the 22nd, at Youngstown State, the team that was in first place just a week or two ago. So Robert Moore is making a ton of noise early in the Horizon League season. I guess it's not that early; they're 6-4, but halfway through that thing. And they're really not that great of a shooting team. Like they're 9th in the Horizon in threes, 9th in the Horizon in twos, 10th in like shot selection. But they're doing it's all effort. You know, they're a high motor offensive rebounding bunch. They get to the foul line, second best in the league doing that. They prevent, they force opponents to create bad mistakes, what we call non-steal turnovers. I call them unforced errors. So they just do a lot of things that really disrupt the opponent, and they've also lucked out a little bit on shooting luck for the opponents. But I think big picture, Robert Morris, Andrew Toole's been there a long time. I think this might be year 14 or 15, and there are some talks about hot seat, and they're really responding. And he did a nice job building this roster, I thought.
Yeah, I think this is a good team. I mean, you look at Cam Woods, he was really good at North Carolina A&T a couple years ago, transferred to NC State last year. He's been a well-traveled guy, but I mean, he's been a nice breath of fresh air on the offensive end for them. But I actually watched a lot of that Youngstown State game, especially in the second half, because Youngstown State did make a furious push to come back in that game. But what the difference was there, I mean, they were going to a pick and roll with Cam Woods and Alvaro Fulgaris pretty much every possession to get 7'3" Gabe Dines out on an island, and he was just taking advantage of Dines every single possession. He got like two or three layups, he got a three. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you have a guy like Dines who he's good at some things. Like he can block shots. He's just not as well polished as a guy like Fulgaris, who's also a sophomore. He's just really skilled, and he's averaging 13 and 9 as a sophomore. He's been a really good player for them. And then Josh Omajafo and Amarian Dickerson from the JUCO level. Those two have been fantastic so
Yeah,
far.
Dickerson's on a great run right now where
Hmm.
he's he put 22 in the Green Bay game. Sure, it's only Green Bay, but 15 in that Youngstown win. He did a lot of like hustle stats as well. 4 offensive rebounds, only 1 turnover, a block shot, 4 steals for Dickerson. So he was an excellent find for Tool. And yeah, it's amazing how these teams are pretty hard to predict in the preseason when you
Hmm.
have the unpredictable JUCO level, unless you're a guru like Sean. It's just hard to know, like because some of the JUCO guys they could be off the team in the first month, or they
That's
could
true.
be
Yeah.
out of the rotation, or they could just blow up like this and really be the key to like a title race. And Robert Morris, overall, I went to their first game in that new arena about 4 years ago. Maybe it was five. I think it was right before COVID. But they played Pitt. Place was sold out. Such a nice arena. And Robert Morris historically that whole decade before when Toole was a younger coach, they were on the rise year in and year out playing for the NEC title, whether they were in the championship game or winning the championship game. So this is a foundation there that, they took the leap to the Horizon League. They've really struggled in this league since they got there. But once they get this thing rolling, watch out because there's a big commitment there for them to be good in basketball long term.
And a lot of these pieces, you never know in the transfer portal era, but just on paper, Fulgaris should be back. Dickerson should be back. Omajafo should be back. So a lot
Yeah.
of these pieces that are being really impactful this year will be back for them next year, barring any transfer portal stuff. But getting into my first team of the week, I'm going with the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, a team we'll talk about
Nice.
a little bit more later. But I mean, this team has been fantastic this year.
Yeah.
Travis Steele was a great hire, and he's really showing why. They have won 8 consecutive games. They are tied for first place in the MAC with the team they'll be playing on Saturday, the Akron Zips. And this team is just a really well-rounded team. Cam Kraft, a guy that Steele recruited Xavier, he's been awesome for him. But a guy that's really been coming on lately is freshman Brant Byers. He's a big time shooter, as a lot of players on this Miami team are. Steele also got Antoine Woolfolk from Rutgers. He's been a really solid piece on that interior. They have Makai Cooper as a sophomore guard, Ian Elmer, another sophomore, and that's kind of the thing about this Miami team. Last year they went 15 and 17. It was an up and down year for them. They showed some flashes of being good, but they were a really young team. And one of the good things about having a lot of freshmen is they're going to get older at some point. Elmer's older, Cooper's older. Those guys have gotten a lot better. Kraft, he's technically a sophomore. I think he redshirted last year, 2 years ago. He's really come on as a sophomore. So this is a team with a lot of guys that have played a lot of college basketball at this point. They've played big minutes in college basketball. I really think it's showing. They have some size, they have a lot of skill. They shoot a lot of threes. They rank 27th in effective field goal percentage. They are 149th in KenPom, and in terms of the MAC, I think that puts them, let's see here, that puts them third in the MAC. I mean, Akron's a clear favorite in KenPom in the MAC at 102. Then the second is Kent State at 140. But they have some pretty clear offensive issues, but they're the best defensive team in the conference by a lot. And then Ohio's dropped a little bit, and with Aiden Hadaway maybe being done for the season, that's a bit of a knock for them as well. So
Yeah.
to me, it's looking like a real three-team race probably in this conference with Akron, Miami, Ohio, and Kent State. I think I would. You think you'd add anybody to that? I mean, Ohio still, but I mean they're just so short-handed.
They're shorthanded, yeah, and Bowles is such a good coach, but it's patchwork for a while. Maybe by mid-February. I mean, I'm just thinking Cleveland-wise, I don't think they're a threat to win the MAC regular season at this point.
Yeah, yeah, they
Um,
they could get hot with those guards. I mean, Pavlovetsky's a
yeah,
monster. Clayton's
yeah.
good
I
too.
mean, by the time you get to Cleveland, it's down to 8 teams. So the bottom four don't get there. And Ohio will still be a top 8 team. I'm pretty
Yeah,
confident.
easily. Yeah, I mean, we
You know,
don't
I,
we
I
don't care
still
much
I
about
wouldn't want
Buffalo or Northern Illinois. I mean, they're not
to.
going to do
Yeah,
much.
yeah. So you're down to like 10 teams playing for 8 spots.
Yeah.
And I think I just don't think you would want in Ohio to finish sixth or seventh and have to play
Mm.
them as the 2 or 3 seed.
Oh, I agree.
That would not get you a lot of sleep as an opposing coach. But yeah, I agree. They're probably out of the race for now.
I mean,
Toledo's a
Kent State's
team.
3-3 in league play too. Like
I
they,
know, I know. It's been weird because their defense just all of a sudden fell apart. That game against I think it was Western Michigan where they gave up
yeah,
90 something
94 points.
made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. This league's had some weird things go on. I don't want to speculate too much, but obviously with Eastern Michigan,
Hmm.
that is actually out there in terms of them getting investigated. As soon as that happened, they won 2 games. So
Toledo's been bad too. Like
Toledo's been
that's
bad, and I had them in Daytona Beach, Sean. They've got guys. It's just and every once in a while it shows back up. But yeah, who knows? Maybe this is the year where like Toledo just struggles all regular season. Then that's the year they finally break through in Cleveland because
maybe that's
they're
what they
being,
need because winning the regular season's not doing it for them. So maybe you're
yeah,
right. I
they
mean,
do
they
that
have
all
the
the time.
talent. They have the
Yeah,
talent. It's not a talent thing. And Todd Kowalczyk, it's not a him question either because he's been a really good coach for a long
yes,
time. I think it just comes down to the pieces fitting, and I think a lot of that is, I mean, he's struck gold so many times with getting not getting lucky, but like always having the next guy. And
right.
Sam Lewis has been really good. Sonny Wilson has been really good. But I mean, it just hasn't flowed as easily. Like when you lose Ryan Rollins and you have Ray J. Dennis and Raheem Moss going off the next year, like it's just at some point that was probably going to come to an end, and it seems like it probably came to an end right now.
Right, yeah. In terms of just the superb floor general and run everything through those guys, that was a nice streak they had. And yeah, it's hard to find that every single year, especially when those guys are out in one year. So yeah, I think that's been tough. I think Miami, Ohio, like to me, has the most staying power just because of that defensive effort. Again, defense starts and stops with motivation and effort. We saw how Kent State was terrific at defense, and I expect that to come back because that's Senderhoff's mo, and they're always good on that side of the ball. But just what I've seen the last week or two gives me some pause with them. And with Akron, they've had a nice schedule to start. Let's just say. And I saw them get ran out of the gym by Milwaukee. So I just personally, I want to get another look at them. So I'm
Yeah.
really, if they perform well against this Miami Ohio defense Saturday, I'll be really impressed. I think it'll be more of a grinder. I still think Akron should be the pick to win, but I would say Miami Ohio can get them back later in the year, and I would still think that they can win the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's your second team of the week after that great MAC dialogue we had? Because it's a weird league this year, so I think we really had to dive in on that.
It is, yeah, and it's kind of sad because usually the top of the league is really good, and
It's
um,
not.
it's just not there right now. So but I hope there's a bounce back in the future. They'll get UMass, which is going to be even more weird next year. But I'll
I mean,
digress.
they've been hot in A10 play, even though we don't talk A10. They're like 4-2 or 4-3. They're hot right now.
They are, yeah, and I just think with that, that's going to go from an Atlantic 10 job to a MAC job. So I don't
Hmm.
know if Uncle Frank's going to want to stick with that, or they're going
Hey,
to
I
have to
wouldn't
make.
blame him if you just wants to hit the golf course and call it a career. He's done more than enough. So,
Oh no, he's too addicted, man. He's too
you
addicted.
think
He'll
so?
Oh, definitely. So he
Okay.
could be like another Phil Martelli Senior and just be an associate coach somewhere and help his
That's
staff
that's it.
out.
That's not a bad life either, though. Like I would do
No,
that
it's
for
a great
sure.
life.
Yeah,
Take the pressure off and just
yeah,
focus on X's and O's. But we'll see. That's a down the road issue to tackle.
yeah. We'll talk
Um,
about that next year.
you bet. I wanted to give Bradley a shout out. I think they've really earned it. When you looked at the start of their road trip, going to Murray State and then going to Belmont, that was like the death trip of the past OVC that nobody could ever sweep. Now that those two teams are both in the MVC, obviously they're fighting tooth and nail to get to the top of this league, but they're still great home teams. Belmont rarely loses more than twice ever at home in a whole season. And Murray State, pretty similarly, although they've had to rebuild a little bit under Prohm. either way, those are tough places to get to, tough buildings to win in. And Bradley absolutely passed the test with flying colors. I thought in the win at Murray State, they got an incredible game from Corey Thomas off the bench, JUCO guy. Gave him his best effort. I think he was perfect from the floor. I mean, he missed 1 3, but pretty much perfect from the floor. Pitched in 6 rebounds. Just really came in during crunch time. And then Duke Dean did his thing with 18. Darius Hannah 16, and they put these guys away with about 10 minutes to go, maybe 8 minutes to go. Won by 13. The Belmont win. That one they got some more extension late as well. Really tight game at the half, and they came out with a great second half game plan. Got another quality bench effort, this time from the freshman, Jaquan Johnson, coming in off the bench for 17, getting eight of those from the foul line. But really, that's awesome for Brian Worrell to depend on. You got your 5'8" senior in Duke Dean, and then you got a 5'11" freshman. But they have some great bigs with Jonovich at 7'1" and Hannah at 6'9". So Bradley is built for a title run. We know Drake's been the big story and the surprise, and they've already lost to Drake. But I think this Bradley team right now, they're in the low 50s in strength of resume, which is getting dangerously close to at-large talk. Obviously, you don't have many opportunities left in this league. They get the road Drake game, and you would have to take another loss, of course, in the MVC tournament. But Bradley is at 17-3 right now. And there's a real path to, if they can get to 27, 28 wins, historically, that would get you in the Missouri Valley. Just for reference, Indiana State last year, I know that's what where everybody's mind goes. At least mine does.
They had the bad loss though. Like we gotta put that into context here. That Illinois State loss, if that didn't happen, they're in.
Right, but they finished 28-6, so it's like
that's true. Yeah,
that's just a crazy amount of wins to not get in. But Bradley this year, like you said, that's a good point. Their losses are Washington State, Santa Clara, and Drake. 3 really good, very solid top 100, top 90 even teams in KenPom, even better teams in the net. So, yeah, like Bradley's very much alive still for a 2-bid Missouri Valley.
I mean, to me, a little bit more on the at-large talk. Where are the 3 losses to get them to those 6 losses? Not saying they will lose 6 more or get to 6 losses, but that's what Indiana State did last year. They had the bad loss to Illinois State last year at home, right after being ranked. If that doesn't happen, they're probably in because they were one of the first 4 out, I believe. So if you look at Bradley this year, and again, I think they were like 17.5-point favorites. Like they were supposed to win that game, so it was just a devastating loss for them. Right. But unless something catastrophic like that happens for this Bradley team, I don't see where they're going to get to 6 losses. Like I could see 5. They're probably going to lose one of at Northern Iowa or at Illinois State. I think one of those will probably lose, and I think that's fine. They can afford a loss to one of those probably, right? Northern Iowa probably preferably.
Preferably, yes. And I'm not sure about the afford to, they do have the San Francisco win, but that was at home. And outside of that, they don't have a win in the top 100, but it was kind of like that for Indiana State too. I really do think the road Drake the opportunity needs to happen. Because if they get the road Drake win, then you probably build a cushion for 2 losses. If you don't get that win, you're pretty much going to have to play mistake-free basketball the rest of the games, and that's probably too much to ask for with this many games to go.
So you think if they beat Drake, and that can open up the door for them losing to Northern Iowa and then losing in the conference tournament to, let's say, Drake, which would give them 2 losses to Drake on the year, which, I mean, is fine, obviously, especially because that one would be a neutral site game. So, I mean, there's a path here, and I think I'd rather see them be in this instead of a lot of other teams. So, for me, Bradley should be that team. I have to switch my headphone here because one of them died. Give me a second. All right, now we're back after the brief delay of me switching out my headphone. But let's see.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that could help a team like Bradley, this is what I'm really curious to see is, wins above bubble is one of 6 metrics that will be listed this year for the first time. 2 of the new 6 out of the 6 total. And I think the wins above bubble, I think Indiana State last year finished 19th. And if that would have been actually on the sheet, I think it would have been really impossible for the committee members to ignore.
Hmm.
I don't know that Bradley can get quite that high,
Where are they
but
right now?
just for reference, I was going to say they're 52. So you
Wow,
pile up,
that's a lot worse than I was expecting.
yeah. 52 is actually not too bad, Sean. Like if they get
Okay,
up,
that's not bad. Okay.
yeah. I mean, if they go like do what we said they could do, that's going to get them probably into the 30s, maybe even
Okay.
maybe a chance to get in the 20s. We'll see. But even the KPI, for whatever reason, they like Bradley even more. They're at 43 there. So, not that the KPI is probably the most overlooked one, but it is an extra one to look at. And the KPI suggestion they would probably be a Dayton team right now. So,
Okay.
again, that at least gets you, if one of the metrics are calling that, it should at least be a team you bring up in the conversation. Not saying they would get in.
And one thing, last thought on Bradley is one thing that makes me a little bit more comfortable with them than I probably felt a month ago is that they've been really solid offensively this year. They've shot it well. They've been able to sustain it all year, shooting 41% from three. That's second best in the country. But their defense has improved a lot over the last 4 games, really 5 games if you count the Drake game. But their last 6 games, they've held each opponent to besides so before the Belmont game, 5 straight opponents to 60
Yeah.
or 65 or fewer points. Like that's pretty good. And their defensive efficiency was in like the 130s a month ago, and it's 82 right now. And I think one of the biggest reasons was adding Jonovich to the lineup because that gives them a little more size on
Yeah.
that interior next to Hannah. Because Hannah's not a true 5 man; he's more of a 4 man. So having Hannah next to Jonovich and having Christian Davis at the 3, and then you can put Zeke Montgomery at the 2. That's 6'6", 6'7", 6'10", and 7'1". Like that's a really tall lineup next to the 5'11" point guard. So you have a lot of size, you have a lot of athleticism. I think that really gives you the best of both worlds where you're going to have a bunch of guys that can shoot it and you're going to be able to defend at a high level.
Yeah, and it shows up in the numbers too. If you just look at Valley games alone, opposing teams are only shooting 26% from three against this Braves team. A lot of that has to do with what you're saying. They're shooting over long arms, big bodies, and they're number one in effective field goal percentage defense, number one in overall defense in the league. Again, that's just league games, but that's what really counts here. And so they've really that change where they put the 7-1 guy in more has made a huge impact on how they defensively game plan you up. And, like we've talked about with several teams throughout the year, Irvine's probably the best example out there in mid-major ball where great defense just turns into great offense. And that's how you get from a 4 to 6 to 8 point nail-biting win to a nice, comfortable 12, 13-point road win, which is what they did at Murray State and at Belmont.
Absolutely, and my second team of the week here is going to be a team. I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I'm including a game that happened on Thursday, but that's fine. They've won a bunch of games in a row, anyways. That's going to be the Maine Black Bears, and this is a program that
Awesome.
has virtually no winning history at the D1 level. Chris Markwood took over a program that was 354th the year he inherited it, and he's done a great job. They're 197th in Ken Palm right now. They are second in America East play, only behind Bryant, who is undefeated at 5-0, and they've won all their games by double digits. But for me, Maine going to UMass Lowell and winning the game the way they did. I mean, I watched most of that game. In overtime, they were
Yeah.
down 4 points, and
Yep.
they were able to, with like 20 seconds left, they got an and one. They got a steal on the inbound. They got a layup. I mean, they scored 5 points in like 8 seconds. So not quite Tracy McGrady level stuff there, but I mean, it was pretty impressive by Maine to put together that kind of effort. And the biggest thing for them all year has been their shooting. They were one of the worst 3 point shooting teams in the country last year. This year, they've shot it pretty well, 35% from three. They're still not a great offensive team, but they're a really good defensive team. They can press you. They're going to force a ton of turnovers, 22% turnover rate, which is 13th in the country. And with the way they're able to shoot it a little bit, with AJ Lopez, who's really come on as a big time shooter, Keon Burns hit some big threes in this one, and Chris Mantis, who came over from App State. I thought he was a really underrated ad for him, and he's proven he could be a big piece with his shooting and size. And then you have Kellen Tynes, who's really just the enforcer on the defensive end. He's just a stud on that end of the floor, one of the better steal getters in the country. Jaden Clayton has come on and done really well in that backcourt. And then they just kind of switch a bunch of their bigs. Ridvan Tutich and Killen Gribby, and those guys have swapped out at the 5, and they've done a really good job. Same deal with Keelan Steele. Those three kind of just switch minutes and they're all really productive. They can all defend, they can all rebound, they can protect the rim. So I think having those guys as those big, tall guys on the interior next to the athletic wings and Kellen Tynes as the point of attack defender is big for this main team. I think Chris Markwood has really proven a lot this season. This conference is really interesting because you have Bryant up there, UMass Lowell has kind of fallen off. Vermont, they did get that big win over UMass Lowell, but how big is that win now with how much they have struggled of late? And Vermont, no
Yeah.
TJ Hurley today. We'll see how good they are moving forward. But to me, it kind of looks like a Maine and Bryant league, which I don't think many people saw coming into the year. You
Well,
seem
it
to
is.
disagree.
Well, it is for tonight. I mean, I think Lowell was the team to beat coming into league play for sure.
Mm,
And Vermont, we're still kind of waiting to see if how healthy they can get. But they've been skating by, picking up wins, like not convincing wins at all. I think they only beat Binghamton by 7 last time out.
mm,
But I think, yeah, I think it's just a lot of games left. These teams all have to play each other twice. Bryant has done, I've actually got them in another section on the show. Tremendous job improving their defense and their rebounding, and their offense is really flourishing as well. A lot like we were talking about, earlier with another team. So I just think this main story is really incredible based on you did a great job explaining their history. It's a little bit unprecedented. They're going to continue to get better. Cooper Flake's little brother's coming to this program next year. A lot of excitement in Orono, and those fans must be so excited. They've been in the bottom forever, and they really stole that game from UMass Lowell. UMass
mm.
Lowell, if you're a UMass Lowell person, you're definitely angry how you gave the game away. They made a lot of mistakes down the stretch and, of course, in overtime. UMass Lowell also was up by 10 at halftime. There were several chances for them to bury Maine, but from Maine's perspective, that's just exactly what Chris Markwood wants, is a gritty, tough team that never quits till the final horn. And you saw tonight like how that mentality can pay off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great story either way, and I think this is a kind of story that gets a lot of people to root for you in the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying they'll win an NCAA tournament game. I'm not putting any kind of expectations on them even getting there, but for them to be in this kind of conversation where we're bringing them up on this show and we're talking about them in a positive light, I think is pretty good for that program based on where they were when Mark Wood took over that program because they were in a bad spot.
Oh yeah, I mean, even getting him was a big deal. There was a point in the last decade where I think the women's coach at Maine became the men's coach. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Richard
there's
Barron,
been
right? Is that his name?
yeah, that's who
Yeah.
it was exactly. So this program's come a long ways. They've been able to do some great fundraising. I know they're either in the process or already have upgraded facilities there, and that's what's helped with recruiting. So I expect Maine to this to be the standard going forward, to be in competition with the Vermonts, with the Bryants, with the UMass Lowells of the conference every year. And Albany eventually is going to get there too. I think. I think a lot of people love Great Dane basketball. They've been trying to recover without Will Brown, but they had such a long dynasty there. I think eventually you'll see Albany back in the mix as well.
Absolutely. Is it time to get into some games of the week, you think? Want to start touching on some of those and get some
Yeah,
predictions going?
let's do that.
All right, well, I'll let you kick it off since this is your section you set up for us.
Okay, sounds good. In no particular order, we do have an interview here coming up around the corner with Xaivian Lee. Check it out; it's an awesome interview.
Hmm.
Sean and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think
Big
you
time.
will as well. You will as well. But we're going to start off with his team back on the court in another big game. That's Princeton hosting Cornell. Princeton last week getting the two buzzer beaters from, or not necessarily buzzer beaters, but game winning shots
We can
from
count them.
Xavier.
Yeah, they're close enough.
They're very close, and he bailed them out in both games for the most part. They're putting that 3-0 record on the line. They'll be at Jabwin at home, but Cornell, they're a team that I covered earlier this year. They really play like a helter-skelter pace, and everybody can stroke. So it's I've seen Princeton play quite a bit, not in person yet this year, but I just think if Cornell can get downhill on Princeton, they've got a really good chance to pull off a road upset. We'll see how it plays out. This Cornell team is number one in the country in effective field goal percentage, 2-point percentage, and so it's a fascinating team because they're going to give up a bunch of points with their style, but they just try to outscore you no matter who you are. And with Princeton's kind of lack of weaponry this year compared to last year, I'm just curious how it plays out because I know Coach Henderson's a genius and they'll have a great game plan, but I want to see how they try to control the pace a little bit when Cornell just tries to run up and down and make threes or get easy layups.
Yeah, I mean, John Jakes has done a really good job in his first year at Cornell. I mean, keeping going what Brian Earl had rolling there, who's now at William and Mary and doing a really good job with that Tribe program,
Oh yeah,
killing it in
amazing.
the CAA. Yeah, but this Cornell team, I mean, they're so much worse defensively though than they were last year, and that's kind of the thing I look
Oh
at.
yeah,
They're 280th in defensive efficiency. Last year they were 176, which still like isn't great, but this year it's just way worse, and they're not forcing turnovers the same way they were. They're getting shredded from three. So like having a great offense is awesome, and they do have a truly great offense. They have a lot of weapons with Nas Williams. He's been really good. Jake Fegan has come
awesome.
on as a sophomore. Cooper Nord is a big time shooter, and you have those two big guys, A.K.O. Karake and Guy Ragland, who I'm a big fan of. I think those two are really good on that interior, just big, beefy dudes, and they both could hit threes from the outside. Okereke has struggled a little bit, but Ragland can really shoot it. So having those guys, I think, is big. But I just don't know how Cornell is going to be able to stop this Princeton team. I mean, Princeton's offense, again, like last year, they were 29th in offensive efficiency. This year, they're 118th. So they've regressed a ton in that regard. But I still know they have it in them. We've seen it at times. It just hasn't been as consistent. They're not as good finishing inside this year. They're a lot more reliant on Xaivian Lee than they were last year, I feel like, because they don't have a Madalocco kind of guy that has that size and can score inside, and he can be a shooting threat too. So it's a lot of Lee, it's a lot of Caden Pierce. It's not necessarily a bad thing because those two are awesome. They could both win Ivy League Player of the Year. They're just going to need somebody else to step up, whether that's Dalen Davis, whether that is Blake Peters. Jackson Hickey had a big game against Akron earlier in the year. They just need someone else to step up and help those two out, and I think it'll happen here. I don't know if Princeton will get off to another slow start because that's kind of been their thing this year. But if they get off to a decent start, I think they'll have a really good chance to win this one. Cornell coming off an 83-82 loss to Brown at home,
Yeah.
1.24 points per possession allowed. Like you can really attack this defense, and I think that's kind of what's going to happen here. Ken Pom projects it as Princeton winning by 3. I think Princeton's that's a good line for them. I would take Princeton there.
Yeah, it's Cornell. I think will be hungry coming off the loss, but you're right. Like, there's not a lot they can do defensively. It's just not in their roster construction slash style of play preference. So they're going to have to pick and choose what things they're okay with letting go and other things they want to key in on. But I think at 2-1 in the league and really their first crack at a for sure top 4 team, I expect Cornell's best effort. So I'll go on a limb and say Cornell is. I think they'll stay inside of that 3, and I'll take them to pull off the upset here.
Okay, I like that. All right, second game
Yeah.
here, and this one is probably the one I'm most excited for. It's Akron against Miami of Ohio. That game is at Akron, I believe. Yeah, at Akron. Ken Pom projects it as a 5-point win for the Zips. And honestly, I didn't know this, so check this out if you haven't. I watched some of it earlier. It was Travis Steele and John Gross talking with Jeff Goodman and Rob Doster on the field of 68. I will be completely honest. I had no clue that those two were brothers. No idea. Did you know
I
that?
forgot. I've heard that. I totally forgot as
Like,
well.
if somebody told me that Travis Steele had a brother that was coaching in college basketball, I wouldn't even have a guess on who it could be. Like, I genuinely had to look it up. I'm like, is this actually true? And it is, apparently. I had no idea.
That's yeah. I've heard it from previous years, but I haven't refreshed my memory on it. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think
Like, I feel like they don't say that on the broadcasts ever, though. Like, I feel like I've never heard that in my entire life. I watch a
yeah,
lot of college basketball.
especially with them in the same league, it's very
I'm
interesting.
just like, what? But I'm sure we'll hear plenty about it on Saturday. But that blew my mind for a good, like, 30 minutes earlier today. So I just wanted to see if we were on the same page there.
Yeah, it should be a fascinating matchup, especially when Miami Ohio has the ball. Miami Ohio is the most effective field goal percent, the highest effective field goal percentage in the MAC, 59.6%, and Akron's the number 1 in the MAC at defensive efficiency on field goal percentage. It's also top 3-point shooting team against best 3-point shooting defense. The matchups just go right number one versus number one on Miami, Ohio side of the ball. It looks like Miami, Ohio has a little bit of an edge on the glass as well. But of course, Akron's been the overall best offense, and Miami, Ohio, somewhere in that 3 range defensively in the league. Again, I'm going off league games here for the breakdown, but I really think the pace of play should make a difference. They both like to go on the faster side of things, but their defenses are very good at slowing fast teams down at the same time. So it's what does that tug of war end up looking like eventually? That's all pretty fascinating to me. But I think Akron has a little bit more playmaker individual skill. So if they play well as a team at home, this is Akron's game to lose. However, Miami, Ohio, like we've talked about, they can grind you. They've done a great job in every MAC game so far. Obviously, they're both 6-0 here, but Miami, Ohio has already passed some big tests, in my opinion. And each of those games, they've been able to build 8 to 12 point leads very early. If they can achieve that, big if on the road here, but they've done it in other road games. They're going to be in great shape to just instill their style and get to the finish line with a win. So very, very curious to see how this first 2 or 3 segments of the game plays out.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you said there. I'm going to go with an upset here. I think Miami of Ohio pulls it off. I just love watching this team play. They just have so many guys that can score the basketball, so many guys that can shoot. And not that Akron doesn't have that, but one thing that Miami does really well is they can force turnovers, and Akron can get a little bit sloppy with the ball. But I'm really excited to watch 2 freshmen here. I mean, Sharon Young has been awesome for Akron all year. He's been a nice playmaker. He's speedy. He can shoot it. He has been a nice piece for John Gross's squad. And I already talked about Brant Byers earlier, but he's 6'8" and has a just beautiful stroke from the outside. I think he's a real impact guy here. But I think if you're looking for like a one-on-one matchup that could kind of dictate where this game is headed, it's Antoine Woolfolk against James Okonkwo on that interior. Like, Okonkwo is just a menace on the glass. He's just a big-time rebounder. But they don't have a lot of size around him. They're a smaller team for the most part. Amani Lyles can play a big role, but they don't necessarily have a ton of depth with Josiah Harris being hurt for like the last month and a half. So if Woolfolk is getting in foul trouble, at least they have Reese Potter behind him. But Woolfolk has been awesome all year too. So I think that's a big matchup to kind of watch in this game. But I think it kind of comes down to shooting and turnovers. And I lean towards Miami in that direction. Even though it's a home game, I think Miami has a really good chance to pull off the upset.
I agree. Like my gut says Miami, Ohio, and like I said earlier, maybe it's because I saw Akron play so badly in Milwaukee. It was only a 1-day sample size, and they've played well in the MAC. I'm curious to see what the atmosphere is like. I think if it was Akron, Toledo, or Akron, Kent State, it would be bonkers. But Miami, Ohio is kind of a new kid on the block. They've been either middle of the pack or really down the last several years. So will Akron bring the juice? In Ohio, you have 6 MAC schools, and these are 2 of them, obviously. So I'm also curious. Like, Miami, Ohio fans are pretty awesome in football. I know a lot of Miami, Ohio alums personally. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring a bus load up there to Akron to just try to cheer their Redhawks on. So a lot of different a lot of different dynamics here. It's probably about a 3-4 hour bus ride, but totally worth it for a game.
It's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally worth it.
That's
yeah, so I'll go with you on the upset, Miami, Ohio. I can't come around on convincing myself Akron's just going to win. But I understand that the percentages are certainly on the Zip side.
Yeah, you saw them once, and that was it for you. Like, you saw them in person, and it just wasn't it for you. Or you saw them more than once. It was during the Canadian tournament, wasn't it?
What's it? That was Kent State. I saw them in Milwaukee at the NBA arena against Milwaukee, and Milwaukee, basically just ran transition on them all day long. They didn't make any adjustments. Milwaukee scored 58 points in the first half on Akron.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
it's probably one of the most biggest points I've seen in the first half. I don't go to non-D1 games, so it's certainly eye-opening performance. I think it was the most in Milwaukee history. But again, I've seen Akron play other times on TV, of course, and they're fine. They probably learned a lot from that opportunity. But I think this will tell us a lot this week, and winners in the driver's seat, no doubt.
No, I love your thoughts there. And moving on to the next game over there in the CAA, It is Charleston going on the road to face Elon, who has been, I would say, one of the biggest, if not the biggest surprise in the CAA. They came into the year ranked 297th in Ken Palm, and now they are 137th after beating Monmouth on Thursday. They're sitting at 5-2 in league play, while Charleston is coming off a loss to UNC Wilmington, an 85-83 thriller. Seems like UNC Wilmington I think they beat them last year too in the regular season.
Yeah.
Really has the Cougars' number, so I think they beat them in the conference tournament a few times. But in the regular season, Takeo Siddle has Charleston's number for sure. But they've lost 2 of their last 4 games, one against Monmouth. That was a stunner. This one, a bit of a stunner in its own right, even though UNC Wilmington is a really good team. But is Charleston in danger of losing back-to-back games against an upstart Elon team under Coach Taylor that has done a really good job? This is a good team. I mean, they are the second tallest team according to average height in the country with Ken Palm. Matthew
Yeah.
Van Komen, 7'4". He's been around for a very long time. Sam Sherry at 6'10". They have that length. Is this another loss for Charleston brewing?
Very good likelihood. But at the same time, Charleston coming off the loss on Thursday, that's going to make them a little bit extra chippy, I think. And so I think it shapes up to an even better matchup after Charleston falling on Thursday, as funny as that might sound.
No, I
But I
agree.
think with Elon has had a nice surge, of course, been down for a long time now, especially here in the CAA era. But they haven't lost in the Shar Center at all year long. And just some quick math here, 8-0 on the year after the Monmouth win. So looking to go perfect at home for the season, but more importantly, stay involved in the race. The way things shook out after tonight, both these teams are 5-2. Towson and William and Mary, 2 huge surprises based on where they were in December, are leading this league at 6-1. So we've got a big race on our hands with Wilmington in that mix and others. So the loser of this game will be in trouble, probably 2 games out of first, whoever loses. And I think that's going to lead to even more entertaining basketball because when you have 2 desperate teams, you'll get the best out of it, all those guys out there on the floor. So I think it's definitely still one of the best games to watch despite the Charleston loss. I know we put the list together before that game started.
I think I'm with you, though. That makes it a little more entertaining because Charleston's going to be wanting that win a little bit extra, probably.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, an easy comparison would be a playoff series in hockey when they play desperation hockey down like 0-2, and guys are just giving their bodies up, going for loose pucks and stuff. I don't even know anything about hockey, but I know that much.
That's more than I know, so I'll give you credit because I know literally nothing about hockey.
But in these league races in the mid-major level, which is why we love watching it, Charleston expects a lot of themselves. They're the best resource team in the league. Chris Mack's probably the highest paid coach. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he is in the league. And so they expect
probably, yeah, I would guess so.
Yeah, and Kelsey was before, so I figured that didn't change. But the amount of resources College of Charleston has is an Atlantic 10 level. It's much different than most of the CAA. So they expect to be in that race. So there's a lot of pressure on them to not lose 2 games this week. And then on the Elon side, they've really been building it up. They've got the Simkin boys. They got Van Komen. They've got a really nice team and a great defense that's been built and put together. And the Shar Center, like I said, I've been watching these crowds just grow and grow all year. You're going to see the biggest crowd of the year at that game, especially since they won tonight on Thursday. So, again, I'm really glad we highlighted it because you might see another overtime, maybe a double overtime game here.
Ooh, I would be down for some double OT. I'm going with Charleston, though. I mean, I hate to disappoint the home crowd, but we talk about their success at home so far this year in conference play. You look at who they beat. They beat Hampton. They beat Campbell. They beat Monmouth. Those aren't exactly the top dogs in the league. Campbell being the Drexel, or that was the road game. Campbell being the best of the bunch. All those teams outside the top 220 in Ken Palm. Monmouth obviously can pull off some upsets. They have Abdi Bashir, who's an absolute stud. He destroyed Seton Hall earlier this year. He's a big-time scorer. But I think the thing I'm most curious to see is, one, can Elon shoot the ball better than they have been? Because this is a team that has shooters. They just haven't shot it very well this year. They're taking a lot of threes, but only shooting 31%. They need TJ and TK Simpkins to start shooting it a little better. Nick Dorn is their best shooter. He's going to have to show up. Sam Sherry can be a really good pick and pop threat. But what I want to see from the College of Charleston, they didn't have Daywalk Tavares against UNC Wilmington, so that's something to watch because he's a starter for them. He would be a big loss in this one because he can really hit it from the outside. But with their two bigs, Lazar Djokovic and Ante Brzovic, those two, I think they could kind of play Matthew Van Komen off the floor. Either they'll keep him on the floor and he's going to get beat up like who would we talk about? Robert Morris did to Gabe Dines, because when you have a guy that's
Yeah.
7'4", a lot of them just aren't that mobile. Like there's very few Victor Wembanyama's in this world. Like a lot of these dudes who are
Yes.
7'3", 7'4" can't move like that, or they're not supposed to at least. That's just not how it's supposed to work. And Van Komen's kind of one of those guys. He's not the most fleet of foot, so I think they could play him off the floor by doing a lot of pick and roll stuff, and the versatility of Brzovic and Djokovic I think will really stand out here. So either they'll play him off the floor and they're forced to go a little bit smaller, which is kind of against what Elon wants to do, or they're going to kind of get beat up defensively, and I kind of lean towards the latter. So I'm going to go with Charleston to pull the road upset because Elon has it as, or Ken Palm has it as Elon -3, so I'll go with the upset here.
All right. Well, I'll take Elon. I think they'll get it done. It's tough to predict because you're right. Charleston's played a lot more high profile games, but Elon in non-conference was able to win at Notre Dame, of course, played extremely well that week. And they also had wins over Wofford and UNC Greensboro, who, if you look at their, KenPom ranking or whatever you want to look at, it's pretty similar to where Charleston's at. So I think they can handle this level. And I know they're fired up. I think tonight was really their really big gut check when they went down by a couple points, despite having a big lead. I think they were starting to look ahead a little too early. But now the big day will come on Saturday, and I think they'll rise to the moment.
All right, I like that pick. A little bit of differing thoughts, but let's move on to the WAC here. Utah Valley, who is currently the top dog in the league at 5-0, facing Seattle, another team that's right kind of near the top of that league. It's Utah Valley going to Seattle, which, as you know, is a very tough place to play, and there will be another game on Utah Valley's record by the time this is up because they do play California Baptist in like 30 minutes as we're recording this. So they might have a loss by the time we're recording this, or they'll be 6-0. So 5-1 or 6-0, and the second leg of a road trip against Seattle. It's Utah Valley is an underdog by 3 according to Ken Palm. So where are you going on this one?
Well, yeah, and I just saw Seattle ended up losing tonight to UC Arlington, so they'll be coming off of a loss. And Seattle has had a weird year. They played a really strong schedule, and this happened to be the team that broke through to beat Washington after never beating them since rejoining D1.
And they led like the entire game too.
Yeah, it was a domination. It could have been a lot worse than the 9 they won by. So they're still sitting at 8-11 overall now after that Arlington loss tonight. They got to fly back home. But I think, I've been tracking Seattle U for a long time, being from the city. And when they play in the Red Hawk Center, it's that tiny 900-seat gym. Can't even get 1,000 people in there. They just seem to shoot better. They play better. They flow. The offense is rhythmic. When they don't play as well, in the NHL arena, Climate Pledge. So this game is going to be at the Red Hawk Center. I think that makes a big difference. Should give Seattle a chance to really knock off the top dogs here, assuming Utah Valley is still in first. At the very worst, Utah Valley will be tied for first. So
yeah, they're going to be the top dogs either way in some degree. So
yep, exactly. So really tough week for Utah Valley, and I'll be thoroughly impressed if they can win in Riverside on Thursday and then get to Seattle win on Saturday. That's a brutal swing for them.
I would almost feel better about this game for Utah Valley if this was swapped with the California Baptist game and this was the first game, because that game is going to be a bit of a grinder too, and then you have to go to Seattle, and like you said, that arena is tough to play, and Chris Victor is a great defensive coach. Seattle is a great rebounding team. They're going to try to get to the foul line a ton. They have some guards that can score with John Christophilus especially. He can really get hot from the outside, and I think this team's a lot different when they have Matthew Alexander, Moncrief, and Kobe Williamson. I think it's worth noting, for a lot of the start of the year, they didn't have Kobe Williamson. Him being back is a big presence for that team on the interior, so those two being back together, I think gives them maybe the best interior in the WAC. I mean, obviously Grant Canyon has some dudes, but with the way those two can defend and rebound, I think it makes a big difference. They'll obviously need some production from Paris Dawson and Malik Arrington to help out Christophilus, but overall, Utah Valley is another one where they're just a really good defensive team. They're 88th in KenPom defensive efficiency. They kind of do a lot of the same things that Seattle wants to do. They're a great rebounding team. They get to the line a ton. A lot of that is because of Dom Nelson, but a lot of their offense is reliant through Carter Welling and Dom Nelson. And I think they're one of those teams. They go on the road. They're so good defensively, but their offense doesn't show up. And the crowd can get Seattle really into it. I think their offense, like you said, could be better at home. I think this is a win for Seattle. Favored by 3. I think they could win this game by like 5-6 range. I think that's a good spot for the Red Hawks at home.
Yeah, I lean Seattle as well, so I'll make that my pick. But some interesting lineup shuffles today with Paris Dawson coming off the bench for the first time and starting Maldonado, but only going 8 minutes. There's not a lot of not a lot of guys seeing action tonight. Maybe that had to do with scoring situation. They were down most of the night, from what I can tell. But
Yeah,
assuming
and
they
they
can,
shot 34% from 2 point range. So like that's kind of
awful,
crazy. Like
awful.
they shot 40 from 3, but they shot 32 from 2. Like and they
And
lost by 9. So yeah.
Alexander Moncrief was a big culprit there, 3 for 11 from two by himself, and Christophilus 2 for 7. He's more of a
Mm.
perimeter from Seattle Prep High School. But yeah, so I think that they're too good to put two stinkers in a row together. So they got that actually kind of helps them next game. But the travel as well, like both teams have to travel, so maybe that gets negated. I'm curious though, because Utah Valley has been really resilient in this league so far with a bunch of other tests, and they've passed them all. So certainly don't want to overlook the Wolverines.
Yeah, I'm going to Seattle here. I just think the loss, especially adding to that, I think this is too good of a spot to pass on Seattle. I think they are really going to show out in this one. And moving on to the Patriot League, Colgate. I mean, it's Matt Langle's league. He just keeps finding a way to win games in the Patriot League, even when they look dead to some degree, against at American with Matt Rogers, one of the best stretch forwards in the mid-major realm. Where are you going on this game?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because Rodgers is the best player in the league at this point. And if you look at the end of last year, American went into Colgate late in the year and beat them. Rodgers went for 23 in that game and 7 rebounds. So, American was my preseason pick to win the league. Obviously, once league started, Colgate became Colgate again and started demolishing people, or at least just kind of cruising through most of their games. They did have one slip up so far. An American with a win, they can get this thing into an even battle. They would both be at 2 losses. So very curious to see how it goes. It's also a big stretch for Colgate because Army, very sneakily, they've won a lot of really tight games.
That
They're
Army
also,
team is kind of good. Yeah.
yeah, Colgate goes to Army Wednesday, so they have to play both the second place teams back to back on the road. So we'll see. But I know American's a very veteran team, and Colgate's kind of they struggled with Bucknell for a while. They ended up getting that one by 7 late. I have a feeling American is going to have the confidence it takes to beat Colgate based on what happened last year, and I'll take American.
I think honestly for me, like the thing is, one of these teams has Matt Rogers and one doesn't, and he's just such a monster. I mean, watching that dude, he is so fun to watch. 41%
Yeah.
from 3 for a dude that is 6'9", just stretches it well, can handle it, and beat slower guys off the dribble. He's just such a fun player to watch. He's one of the better mid-major players in the country. But on the opposing side, Jeff Woodward has really come on for Colgate during league play. He's getting a ton of assists. He's just kind of that prototypical Colgate big man that I feel like earlier in the year he wasn't playing super well, but now during league play he has been fantastic. So I think getting him going is a big difference for this Colgate team. But in general, though, this isn't your regular Colgate team. They're not what they were 2-3 years ago. They don't have a Jordan Burns. They don't have a Tucker Richardson. They just don't really have that kind of guy at the guard spots. They have some solid pieces. Jalen Cox isn't bad. Nicholas Louis-Jacques is not bad either. Parker Jones can shoot it from the outside. Chandler Baker can shoot it. But overall, this game being at home for American, I think, is a big difference. This is probably going to be a bit of a low-scoring game, and honestly, the team who wins it is probably going to have to shoot better from the outside because these are two high-volume three-point shooting teams, but I think that American is ultimately going to win it at home.
There we go. We're on the same page, Sean.
Yeah, we missed a couple there, but we'll revisit and see who ultimately came out on top.
Yeah, these are good, really good matchups, though, and that's why they're on here.
Yeah, I think we have one more here too, right?
Yes, we have Howard at Norfolk State for first place in the MEAC. The MEAC only has 8 schools, so they only play 14 league games. So we're just getting warmed up in the league.
I
But
gotta interrupt you real fast. I like this Howard team, and they've been really hurt, right? But Blake
yeah,
Harper's awesome. But they're playing for first place in the MEAC, but they have lost to two D2 schools in the last week. Like
yeah,
obviously that
they're in
doesn't count
first.
for anything on metrics or anything. But I don't.
Yep.
They've lost to two D2 schools. Like that is insane. I don't know if I've seen that by a D1 school.
Not by a D1 school that's in first place because they're in
Yeah, like
first place.
that's insane. That's like Chicago State from like 5 years ago level stuff. Who was the other one that went down? Savannah State. That's like that kind of stuff. Like that's crazy. And this is a good Howard team
It's
too.
crazy. Yeah, it is. It's kind of a sign of things. You never know with those non-division one games either, because sometimes coaches will just play the walk-ons no matter what, or
Mm.
you're going to tell your star, hey, you got 15 minutes tonight, do whatever you want, but don't get hurt. They're managing coach differently, so I try not to take them too seriously, which is why I think a lot of the metrics and the committee, of course, will never look at them. And so I try to stay in that frame of mind, but obviously it's entertaining if
Yeah, I
the
mean,
managers
it was just so
do.
odd to me. Like they've played two games in the last 8 days, both against non D1s, and they lost both, and they were coming off
Yeah.
three straight wins. So,
So we'll keep our eye on the Bison health going into this one.
mhm.
But don't forget Norfolk State. The last time they played a D1 game, they surprisingly lost at Morgan State. So they're not off the hook yet either.
Mhm.
And that should make them hungry because they know if they handle their business at home with Howard, they're in a first place tie, or at least in the loss column, they'll actually go up by one win. So I expect that to happen, just especially based on what Howard did during the break here leading up to this. But if Howard's healthy, this is what the reason I put it down is because this is the series we were waiting for all year in the preseason, and
I
so this
still
will
think
be.
it's a great game. Yeah, I still think it'll be a really good game.
And they got after each other pretty well last year when Howard got that done in the championship game. So
I do think this is Rob Jones's best team at Norfolk State, though. Like, I do think,
Brian
I
Moore,
mean, and
yeah,
Ken Palm's
amazing.
numbers kind of point at this too, but just watching the two teams, these are two teams I've kind of had an eye on because Blake Harper is a really fun freshman to watch. Like, that kid can really, really play. He's just a different kind of player in the MEAC, you can tell. I mean, the size, the athleticism, the ability to get to the rim, the ability to rebound, just do all those little things. He is a big time talent in this league for Howard. But what Rob Jones has done, I mean, he just is so good at getting guys from the transfer portal and just kind of replacing a dude year after year. Like last year, it was Jamari Young who really came on, and then he transferred to South Carolina. Okay, well, here you go. Brian Moore is now your guy, and he's been probably the best player. Maybe it's been Harper, but one of those two have been the best player in the league. Moore's been awesome. Gets to the foul line a ton, 80 times so far this year, 56% on 2-point field goals. He's athletic and just a great driver. Christian Ings has also been really good at returning guard. And Jalen Myers, another guy that started at the JUCO level, then went to UT Martin for the last couple of years. He has been really good. He's shooting 88% from the foul line as a 6'8" forward. Another really athletic guy, can stretch the floor. And this is projected as Norfolk State being an 11-point favorite. Even though Howard's coming off some losses, that's a lot of points for what this game should be.
Yeah.
Like, these are teams that are going to play hard. Howard's defense is bad. They are 355th in defensive efficiency, but the way their offense plays, I think they're going to be able to stay competitive. I'm assuming maybe they get some of these bodies back that they've been missing because you're not bringing anybody back against a D2 school. It doesn't matter. So if they're able to get at least Joshua Strong or Bryce Harris or Dom Campbell, get some of those guys back, I think they can make this a fairly competitive game because just the stakes are so big. There's so much to play for to be at top of the conference, and they do have a lot of talent with Marcus Dockery and Harper and Shockley Okeke. They have some pieces for sure to compete in this game.
No doubt. Yeah, and I think they know each other so well too. That's
Mm.
the thing about league play is not to go back to the Big South again, but one of the
I could do that all day. Yeah.
okay, cool. One of the things I thought Gardner Webb and Asheville did yesterday, so while at the game I was covering, is they just took each other's strengths away like right from the tip, and that's why you went from a game where you thought just reading the stats and all their other results, this game could be like in the 170s, 180s. Both teams like to score. Gardner Webb had just scored 96 the game before against Upstate, and when you have two really good competitive teams willing to work hard on defense and take away the other team's strengths, that's how rock fights get created. And you can see some of that, especially in a series like this. So really curious just about the chess match. Obviously, if Howard doesn't have all their horses, it's probably not going to be possible. But if they do have enough pieces there, then the motivation is there for this game.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at those lines, if Howard is plus 11, which the line usually mirrors Ken Palm to some degree, I don't think this will be a double-digit loss for Howard. I think they have too many weapons, so I would take Howard plus the points there. But that'll wrap it up for our game predictions of the week. Anything else you really want to add? I think we touched on a lot of topics this week, got into a lot of stuff. So if there's anything you want to add, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple performances, some shout outs. So Barrington Hargris,
Mm.
UC Riverside, the big win over UC San Diego, goes for 40 points. Just a sensational performance. He's a high major player, probably getting tons of phone calls and texts from the high
He
majors
probably
after
will
that.
be next year. Yeah.
Yes. And I thought the other really interesting part of that game was Isaiah Moses' sidekick. Plays 26 minutes, doesn't score a point, but he had 10 assists. And they've really got that whole thing figured out. Hey, Barrington, you're hot. I'll get you the rock, baby. And they beat one of the best mid-major teams, and just such an impressive win. Congrats to Mike McPio, the whole staff, the whole team. We love you guys. Good work. Keep it going. They're, as we record this on Thursday, getting ready to play Irvine. Another big-time game, a rematch there. Another shout-out to Ahmad Robinson of Mercer. Just had an incredible game. Mercer pulls off a 1-point road upset over UNC Greensboro, and Robinson was one of the impact transfers in the league. Everybody at Mercer's new under Ryan Ritter, an up and coming coach that's done so well at both Tennessee Martin and Bethune Cookman before that.
Yeah, he's killing it.
Yeah, and Ahmad Robinson, 33 points, 6 dimes, 5 steals, and 5 boards. I mean, all
Filled
that
it up.
stuff. Yeah, just outstanding. And then the last one is Aaron Cooley, not always the biggest scorer at Brown, and he had never scored over 20 points in his career. He ends up going near perfect. I think he only missed one shot. Scores 28 points in the upset at Cornell. Then he had all 28 points, Sean, because they won by 1. And he also added 7 rebounds. He blew up all the offensive rating efficiencies. But I just think that's something. That's why we love college basketball, because you go into any kind of matchup, you would never think a guy like Cooley would go for 28 and lead an upset.
On a really off night for Keno Lilly, might I add. Like, he was way off in that game.
And you were talking earlier about how bad Cornell's defense is. Well, Mr. Cooley sure appreciated that and exposed it. So
Yeah, he showed him what's up, that's for sure.
But yeah, so definitely some shout outs for those guys. And then just teams wise, real fast. I wanted to, I think they're about to lose, but that's okay.
You jinxed them. Yeah, I don't believe in jinxes, by the way. Like, we could spend a whole hour on why I don't believe in them, but
Yeah, no, it's not a jinx thing. It's really just Appalachian State thumping teams defensively, and that's still going on tonight. They're losing 57-47 with 3 minutes to go as we finish this recording, but they're 16th in the country since New Year's in defensive efficiency. They've played some challenging games in the league. They've absolutely thumped everybody until having to go to the most talented team in the
Dustin
league.
Kearns basketball.
Yep. And I think Appalachian State, Dustin Kearns, right in the mix, I think, for the Sun Belt, that crazy bracket. They're going to want to finish as high up in the standings as possible, because you have to play all these extra games if you don't. But they are trending in the right direction regardless. Bryant, we touched on best basketball of the year at the right time. They're really clicking with the 10th best effective field goal percentage defense in the country in the last 4 weeks. And they're, like I said earlier, they're dominating on the glass on both ends. That's creating great offense. Congrats to the Bulldogs on their amazing start to the season in the conference. And they're just finally starting to get to 500 as an overall record. And I think that's one of the fun parts of non-conference, is just learning what you got. And then when the lights are on for real, and that's what you have to realize when you're listening to our show, a lot of these leagues we're talking about, their lights aren't on for real until league play starts, because it's a one-bid league.
Yeah.
And then
they're just getting paid to lose those games, essentially, in the non-conference. Like, they know what they're getting paid to do. If they pull off an upset, that's just a bonus.
That's right. And then the last shout out, Southern University Jaguars off to a 5-0 start in the SWAC. And I think the impressive part is they haven't played the bottom feeders at all in the SWAC. They haven't played Pine Bluff yet. They haven't played Missouri Valley. They haven't played Florida A&M. So they are 5-0 against five of the better programs in the conference, and they're absolutely thoroughly dominant on defense. If you run those same numbers from the time league play started, they come in at 27th in the country in effective field goal percentage defense. They control the glass big time. A lot of commonalities with my picks here, as you can tell. They force bad shots. They invite teams to come inside the arc, and they're very good at trapping, penetrating guards, penetrating wings, and forcing bad shots or turnovers. And it really leads to amazing offense for Southern. That was never better showed off in non-league when they upset La Tech at La Tech.
Yeah, that was a wild one. Yeah, I thought that was more about La Tech than anything, but it was a lot about Southern too.
Yeah, and Southern's I don't know exactly where they are in these power performance systems, but they have performed like a top 100 team in the last 4 weeks.
That's a wild one. I'll give a few shout outs before we head out here in a few different areas. Omaha 6-0 in Summit League play. If you saw that coming, I applaud you because I can promise you didn't. They beat St. Thomas. Like, this team is otherworldly hot right now. Chris Crutchfield is doing an outstanding job there with the Mavs. And the thing about them, they just returned so much from last year. Markel Sutton, Tony Osborne, J.J. White, Jay Sean Glover. 4 huge pieces, all back from last year. Cam Thomas coming in from the JUCO level, I believe. Lance Waddles coming over from North Dakota State. Joshua Street coming over from North Dakota State. I wasn't sure if I could believe in this team after going like 3-0. I'm like, okay, maybe they just had a hot start. I don't know how I can't believe in this team right now because they're 6-0 in league play. They just keep finding ways to win games, and that leads me into Cleveland State. Daniel Robinson doing a great job there, former Iowa State assistant. I believe he was there with Otzelberger right at the start, if my memory serves correctly. So defense, of course, being in his DNA, no surprise. He's doing a great job. That defense is elite, and they're 9-1 in league play. They're just doing an outstanding job so far this year. And the thing about him is last year and the year before is Tristan Enaruna doing a little bit of everything for him on the offensive end. This year they're probably not as good offensively, but they have a lot more weapons, I would say, than just an Enaruna type guy. They have Tevin Smith. They have Taj Staveski. They have Jay Sean Stevenson, a freshman guard. They have a lot of different pieces on that team, and they're just so good defensively. They really stifled Detroit Mercy the other night. I think they only scored 50 points. So Cleveland State, they've been fantastic. And players for me, I mean, AJ Lopez, I talked about him earlier, so I don't have to do a whole lot more here for Maine, shooting 44% from 3 this year. Tylen Pope, he's the epitome of a guy who's just a player role kind of guy at Tulane in Nevada. He never played a huge role at either school. He's just a role guy, a glue guy, going to bring the energy. He's found his position at Texas State, and that's just being a total dog. 18-plus points in 5 straight games. He's blocked 2 shots or more in 4 of those games. And if you're a big man who can make free throws, you have a special place in my heart, and that is exactly what Tylen Pope does. 8 for 11, 8 for 10, 0 for 0 for some reason, 11 for 14, and 13 for 14. And he started 13 for 13 in that game because I was watching most of it today against Louisiana. So Tylen Pope, tip of the cap to you, my man, because you have been killing it. 15 points per game, 6 boards, shot blocking maestro. And then Tate McCubbin, a 30-plus point game the other day for Austin Peay. He was a really nice find as a freshman for them. And what Austin Peay's done, I mean, they pulled off a win over Central Arkansas. They're not a real contender in the ASUN per se, but Tate McCubbin, he's really helped stretch out this offense. He's playing a lot of small ball 5 for him, and Austin Peay's offense has looked a lot better for it of late. They can really stretch the floor now. They don't have a plotting big in there with a Cy Witt, who's really struggled so far this year, but they can really let those guards get downhill and create now and kick it to shooters with Tate McCubbin really coming on for the Govs.
Good calls, Sean. I like those.
Yeah.
All well deserved as well. Big performances and definitely teams on the rise that you mentioned as well. So
I would also say probably the most deserved thing here is spending a good 15 minutes with our guy Xaivian Lee from the Princeton Tigers. So we're going to go kick it off to him. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back next week. We'll be back with another interview. If there's anybody, if you're still watching this point and there's someone you want us to interview, just go ahead and comment it. Someone said they want to see Xaivian Lee. So we went and got Xaivian Lee. That was what kind of prompted this, and he's been awesome. So hope you guys enjoy that interview. We will be back next week. All right, here for this week's edition of the Field of 68 Mid-Major Show interview, we're joined by Princeton guard Xaivian Lee, who has been pretty hot of late. Hit a game winner against Columbia the other day. Hit a game winner against Dartmouth, and I have to start off right there. What about those big moments makes you ready? Because it was the same shot in pretty much the exact same spot. How do you prepare for a moment like that, and how do you stay confident? Because for me, I would be pretty terrified of taking that kind of shot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think when you're watching those sort of moments and in those games, for me personally, I get more nervous just kind of seeing what guys are going to do when I'm watching on my TV. But I think when I'm in the game, I don't really think about the situation too much. Obviously, I got to know time and score and what the situation is, but I try not to let the pressure get to me or whatever. I kind of just try and treat it as like a practice or one-on-one or playing for the end of a drill because as soon as you start thinking about what's at stake, I mean, it's a little harder to kind of play loose. And then in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
move, on film, yeah, it really was kind of the same footwork. But I wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do. It was more so just kind of try and make a read based on what the defense was giving me. Both times they kind of were sagging off a little bit, so I felt
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with the space and didn't want to try and force something. So yeah, just trying to not try to be in the moment a little bit, just play with what the flow of what's going on, and then just hope for the best.
Yeah, so giving Xavier Lee space probably not the best move, I would say.
Yeah, I mean Dartmouth. I think if you watch the game, I had like two turnovers back to back right before it, so I was like, this one might have to go up. I don't know if I can really try and force a drive here again. So
Yeah,
same
to
with
make up
Columbia
for it.
too. Yeah, exactly. Same with Columbia. I mean, I was having an atrocious shooting night the entire game, pretty much up until that point. But my shot felt good. Like I was back rimming a lot, so I was like, that's always a good sign. So this one, gotta just play like you're playing great the entire time.
Yeah, I mean the Columbia game, Xavier, you had 26 shot attempts. So obviously a shooter's mentality, right? Like you're feeling good. You're not getting rattled by all those misses piling up. Is that the mentality that you had like late in that game?
Yeah, I mean it's tough, obviously. To be fair, you got kind of look at it with a grain of salt. I mean, I think there's one possession where I might have missed three shots in a row, like two times perhaps. So some of it's like obviously it's tough when you're kind of having a bad stretch or whatever. But at the same time, like my team expects me to produce whether I'm playing good or playing bad. So I think every possession is just a new opportunity. So I don't really try and let what happened throughout the game affect me. If you look at the whole season, obviously each game matters, winning each game matters, and every game's kind of different, but it's kind of like one big sample size, so I try not to let five shots in this game affect me. I might hit five in the game before, against Dartmouth. I came out, shot really efficient, so kind of find that happens in college. Sometimes you come out, play really well one game. Sometimes some stuff might not go your way the next. So with all that being said, I know like down the stretch, I still have to make plays, whether I've been playing good in the first half or poorly. So kind of when that time comes, I think I've gotten better this year at kind of just staying composed despite how I'm playing. And then just focusing, 4 or 5 minutes down the stretch, like that's when, you really gotta make plays. And obviously playing well up to that point helps, but at the same time, people are gonna remember what happens at the end of the game more so. So Columbia, I think, is a great example of that.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
approach.
Yeah, so last year in the offseason, you tested the NBA waters, and I'm sure even though you never entered the transfer portal, I'm sure people wanted you to enter the transfer portal, but ultimately decided to come back to Princeton. But it seems like in the NIL era, there's been a lot of players more so leaving the Ivy League before their eligibility's up in the Ivy League. So with that kind of being a thing, what prompted you to come back to Princeton rather than go chase that money or go chase the professional ranks?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, last spring was probably one of the most difficult times of my life from a kind of deciding perspective and not knowing what was the best move or whatnot. But for me, at the end of the day, I try to look at everything very objectively. I think now more than ever with the Ivy League, kind of guys are starting to bet on themselves and not sort of. I think there was this kind of feeling that the Ivy League was immune to the transfer portal stuff just
Mm-hmm.
because of the quality of the education and degree, which is very true. But at the same time, as you allude to, there's so much money out there that guys are starting to make, decisions for themselves and whatnot. But for me, honestly, I try to. I'm gonna talk about the transfer portal first, but I try to not let money be like a motivating factor in that. Obviously, everyone has their own situations and circumstances, but for me, I was just trying to put myself in the best position for when I get out of college, because hopefully, if everything goes well, I'll be able to make that money eventually. So I try to not let you know that influence my decision and more so be just based on where I thought was best for me in terms of basketball perspective, a life perspective, and then preparing me for the next level after college. And I honestly just thought wholeheartedly that like Princeton was the best spot for me to keep developing. I know what I'm gonna get. I feel comfortable here. I know, I'm have um, a big responsibility, and I kind of know what I'm getting, and I can, step up to that. Whereas, going somewhere else, obviously there's a lot of risk associated with that. I'm not saying obviously I'd be prepared for that, but for me, I thought Princeton was the best place to let my game keep developing and develop as a leader and all that. And then obviously the NBA testing stuff was really cool as well. But hopefully we can do that again soon. I mean, I learned
You'll
so
be
much
there
from
one day.
that.
You'll be there one day.
Yeah,
No doubt about that.
I learned a lot for sure. But yeah, definitely it was good to see what that whole experience was like and be ready for this year, next year, whenever it is.
Yeah, it's a fascinating perspective, Xavier, because I think, being in the Ivy League, you have these great options either way, right? Like if you have to chase the money, there's great options. The degree will get you far in life, regardless of basketball. So appreciate the perspective. And just to reset for the audience, Princeton basketball right now is on a 7-game winning streak, has not lost since December 7th against Furman. 3-0 in the Ivy League, 2-game winners by Mr. Lee, who joins us. And now you have 4 in your career, Xavier. And I think last year we loved your team, Sean and I for sure. I
Hmm.
do a lot of bracket forecasting work, and I know it was frustrating to lose in the semis to Brown in the upset, but I really felt like the committee should have gave you guys a deeper look. All those road wins have to mean something, and this year's team a little bit different, and not as much dominance and success, but you found other ways to win. You're not as big. Like I noticed, you're 310th in team height. I think there's little bit more, even more of a load on you and Caden. Do you want to talk about what navigating this season has been like compared to last year?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, the end of last year was tough. I think we all kind of learned a lot from that. I think this year, obviously, we've had more ups and downs. If you just watch the games, it's been crazy. But I think that's kind of helped us, at least for me personally. Like I think going through some of that adversity earlier on in the season, I mean, up till now too. I think it's just kind of preparing us for whatever sort of situation we might get, faced with down the road. I think last year we were so good that it was just almost smooth sailing pretty much the entire time. So it was kind of like a stunner at the end when we got upset. But this year for sure we've kind of faced every single situation possible. So I think that will only help us. As you said before, like I think we put ourselves in pretty much the best position we could for an at large. Obviously it's hard to go undefeated the entire time, but
Right.
that's just like the reality of the situation. Sometimes it's tough. We'd love to get better games, play, anyone who wants to play us. But sometimes you just gotta,
Yeah.
deal with what your schedule is and do and make the best of it for sure. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And with all that being said, we still play a lot of really tough teams, a lot of really great mid-major teams, to be honest, like all the teams that you might not really hear of if you're just the average, college basketball fan. But I think this year for sure, getting tested early throughout the entire time is definitely helping build our character, and we're finding, we're very resilient, and now we're just trying to work on piecing it together for a full 40 minutes. Part of the reason all these wins are so like great to watch and they're cool comebacks is because we're starting out so slow. So for us is try to figure out how we can, practice harder, so that during the games we're not, starting off slow and having to rely on those like crazy comebacks in the end. So for us is trying to really learn how we can play a full 40 minutes, and hopefully down the line once those 2 games come, we'll be completely prepared for that.
Yeah, the Tigers are 8-1 in games decided by 4 points or less, and a big chunk of those wins were just in this 7-game win streak right now. So it's been incredibly impressive just finding different ways to win, and with what you explained, and that's a little scary if you guys do starting the game off better, because then maybe you can separate and extend leads and really start rolling into March.
Sure, sure.
Do you think there's a real reason for why you guys are starting so slow? I mean, just thinking about some of the games, like the Akron game, you guys had to put together a pretty crazy comeback. The game against Columbia, like you guys were down like 16 with 6-7 minutes left. The game against Akron, like you guys, Dalen Davis had to hit that big shot. What is it about you guys that has made you start a little bit slow? And obviously, you guys have corrected the issues late, but what is it about the slow starts?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, Akron game, for example, Cade went down right away, so
Mhm.
that was kind of a grind the entire way through. But I think we just got to come off with better energy to start games, to be honest. I think sometimes we're kind of feeling our way into games. I'll take responsibility for that too, because a lot of how we go is based on, how I'm playing and how I'm feeling. So I think we just really got to place more of an emphasis on, feeling like we're down 10 from the start and not kind of feeling our way into games. I think that's just kind of something about our personality as a team that we need to work on, and that we're trying to for sure.
Yeah, hey, Xavier, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Canadian basketball. So I had the opportunity to cover and be on the broadcast up in Lethbridge for a tournament called the Western Slam, ran by the same company that does the Atlantic Slam in New Brunswick. Western Slam was in Lethbridge. We had a good time with that. But obviously, on those broadcasts, we were praising Canadian basketball, all the different types of players that have come into D1 in the last decade. And I know with you being such a big star in Canada and here, have you had a lot of talks with younger players that are coming up the ranks about the advantages to get into D1 college basketball?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Not probably in like a specific like forum where I'm talking to guys, but like just my friends growing up, during COVID, I used to just play at the park with a lot of guys that are younger than me. So just like I've built a lot of connections through that, and just like going to AAU events that I played in growing up, and just like talking to guys. I'm obviously just with the D1 schedule, we're not really home that much to be honest. But
Yeah.
when I get a chance, I'm definitely talking to all my boys back home and some of the younger guys. And I think just recently, past decade, there's just been such a rise in Canada basketball,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to the NBA level. Obviously, like we've seen that since like 2015 probably, and I just think Canada's definitely very talented. I think people are starting to see that now. Even just at the D1 level, there's more and more guys that are producing and starting to get sort of that attention. So it's definitely cool to see.
All right, one more question for both of us before we let you go, Xavian. My question's going to be, this is your third year in college. What so far has been your best memory at Princeton? Obviously, you weren't playing a huge role in that NCAA tournament team. I think you had some injuries. Last year, you had a great year, but you guys lost to Brown in the semifinals. This year, you guys are off to a really solid start. So what's been your favorite memory so far at Princeton?
What a question. I mean, I think I have to go with just our Sweet 16 run. That's obviously unforgettable. I wasn't playing that much as a freshman, but just being a part of that, as a team, like that was obviously incredible. And I think that kind of set the precedent of what we do here at Princeton. And, I kind of carried that energy and momentum into my sophomore year and kind of was like, now we expect to do that. So obviously it was a little bit of a bummer when we lost last year, but, I'm very confident in that we can, perform at that level. Other memories, I mean, playing Rutgers, beating Rutgers was obviously very fun. Playing against my old teammate Zach was pretty cool at the Prudential Center, big venue.
And
That
two
was a lot
top
of
10
fun.
picks.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That was definitely very cool. So probably those two for sure.
Yeah, Xavier, Sean and I are both bigger Twitter guys. I barely even check my Instagram, and I know you're probably tired of the Instagram level question, so I'll put a twist on it. I know that you have a huge following there, but has that allowed you to meet like any like big celebrities or people you would have never otherwise met that have made a difference through just your following on Instagram?
That's a good question. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Just sometimes like guys reaching out or like, sending me a little message here and there. I can't really think. I mean, I trained with Jeremy Lin in the summer. That was pretty cool.
That's a good one. Yeah,
That
that's
was,
a good one.
that was probably like kind of through that
That's a
social media stuff a
natural,
little bit. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
natural fit there. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit of a natural fit there. But not really in particular I can think of. There's definitely been some sort of cool moments that have like came from that. But yeah, it's definitely been cool to see. I try and not let that, social media affect, our day to day too
Yeah.
much, obviously, and what we're doing. But it's definitely cool to see interacting with people who, I might not come across in a day to day setting. But yeah, I definitely follow you guys on Twitter. You guys have some good stuff out there. So
Thank you,
it's cool to
thank you.
get guys on
Appreciate
here
it.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again to Princeton star guard Xaivian Lee for joining us on the show. Appreciate it, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Yes, sir. Thanks.